story because I think it's fun. So when I was 18, I had just graduated high school, and I was a D-plus student, to say the most. Proudly, I was a proud D-plus student. I graduated high school with a 1.98 GPA, and my entire goal was to just get through high school. Just let me get through high school. And Ryan saw that I had some small creative ability and decided that it would be best if I got to work with him. And so he brought me on at the age of 18 to be the videographer here, and spent 5 years developing me. 6 months in, I'll just tell this story real quick because this is my favorite story to tell about you. 6 months in, I was still doing the same thing that I had done in high school, which was develop D-plus work. It's what do I need to do to get this done, and let's go ahead and get it out there. And I was back in that room back there that he just came walking out of, and he asked me to create these cafe menus for our cafe. So I created them just as bland as they could possibly be. I brought him back into the green room real quick to show him what it was that I had created, and he was like, all right, cool, give me like 1 minute. Walked out stage, grabbed the people who were out here, who were all of our like high creative people. They're literally our creative arts team. Brought them back there and gave them the opportunity to tell me where I had screwed up creatively. that was the nicest way of putting it. And then after 10 minutes of letting them tell me what it is that I could do to improve, he sent them back out here, and then he looked at me and said, no, I have you for 10 minutes. And those next 10 minutes changed my life, and they were the 10 minutes that created this conference. So if you want to join me in welcoming Ryan Maddock, someone who I fully believe is capable of being on the stage and providing us with the best knowledge, let's go ahead and welcome them together.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, JD. What makes people happy? What makes your clients happy? What makes your employees happy? And I think most of all, you got to understand what makes you happy, what's going to make you happy. And I wanted to start with this because I think it's a pretty important question. I think that everyone came here with different goals. Everyone came here with different things you want to accomplish, and whether that's grow your business, increase sales, increase your profitability, expand into different markets. Whatever the case is, you've got to start with this fundamental question. What's going to make your clients happy? What's going to give you happier employees? And I think most importantly, what is it that you want? What is it that's going to make you happy? And so Google did a study on this a few years ago, and I've referenced it in a few talks, where they set out to see what makes people happy. And anytime someone's going to spend tens of millions of dollars of their own money that's going to benefit my company, I'm going to go take advantage of that research. And so what they found was it wasn't just money, it wasn't just accomplishment, it wasn't just being a part of something, it wasn't just making a difference, it was all of those things. But they found this one common thing over and over again in every person they surveyed, and every person that was living these happy, kind of said, yes, I've got a happy life, I've got a happy lifestyle. And one of the things they found over and over again is that these people were part of a successful community. They were part of successful cultures. They were surrounded by successful cultures. It's always good when a company spends, again, millions and millions of dollars to answer a question with another question. And that question was, well, fine, then what makes successful cultures? And so this is a widely published study. Lots of universities have looked at it. Lots of corporations have looked at it. It's called Project Aristotle, if you care to look it up. And what they did was they set out then, okay, if this is the key to customer happiness, this is the key to making your employees happy, this is the key to finding happiness for yourself, then we're going to go out there and we're going to study what is it that makes for a successful culture? What is it that makes for a successful organization? And, Ryan, I'll talk about your talk a little bit last night, that, we see this. Listen, you can't look at the photos and not know that's a successful culture. You can't look at the family environment that's there in the fact that I've been down to that flagship dealership he's talking about, and you walk in and it's family. Everybody there, from the coffee shop to service to everything, it's like family. It's like everybody's coming around, hanging out. I couldn't leave without people posting me on their Instagram with selfies, okay? And I just met them, okay? But that's culture. And so they went into companies like Ryan's. In fact, they went into thousands of companies all across the world that are gauged as successful, that are gauged as successful in their own right, in their own industries, and they looked for those commonalities. And they said, okay, what is it that makes Ryan Ryan? And what is it that makes these other companies, them. And what is it that works? And in that process, of course, you also find out what is it that's not successful. What are the failures? Ryan talked about some of those yesterday. And so as they're uncovering these, you have to realize if you go out all across the world, different languages, different everywhere, and ask people what is it that make it work, I mean, if you sit down with Ryan and you sit down with Ronnie, they're going to have different answers. And so that's exactly what they got. You go out to thousands of companies, what you end up with is you end up with thousands of opinions, thousands of answers, thousands of methodologies and practices and behaviors, and overall thousands of core belief systems. And so you're still left with this, well, then what is it? You know, because Ryan says the way to be successful is this, and Ronnie says the way to be successful, you know, what is it? What is this commonality? And so they would go out there and they would study things, and they would study different, same industry, different industry. And one of the things they found is that there were these universal truths. There were these common threads, no matter what industry they looked at, no matter what country they were in, no matter whether they were in Silicon Valley, Seattle, Wall Street, Main Street, it didn't matter. They found that every successful organization, every successful culture, every successful person that they looked at in this study, they had a few things in common. And they talked about things like goal setting and having clear goals. Again, I'm kind of picking on Ryan, but you know, last night he talked about this very clear goal. It's a pretty simple one when you can say, in a sense, largest dealership in the world. I love goal statements that you can do in 4 or 5 words that everybody gets and are very laughable. Those are, because there's kind of this moment where it's like, oh, he's serious. Oh, okay. But, so they looked, and so you look at goal setting, you look at things like teamwork, but still you have this problem because, you know, you read these interviews, and again, they're publicly available, and you see these interviews, and one person will say, teamwork is really important. And the way we define teamwork here is that you've got to have really clear leadership, they have really clear goals, and that their team members have clear understanding on the org chart of what they do. And then you go over to another company and they say, teamwork is really important. And you say, that's it, that's the commonality. What's teamwork mean to you in your daily life? It means no managers, no org chart, everyone's their own boss, everybody's got clear empowerment, decision-making process. And you say, well, okay, so you have a word in common, but no methodology, no practice. And I think most of you, if you get caught up in the blogs and the, you know, just everything that's out there, we have so much information coming at us. And it can get overwhelming for exactly that reason, because you read, I mean, you know, whatever industry you're in, you read one person who's an industry leader, and they're telling you to do it one way. You read someone else, they're telling you to do it another way. And this goes from car dealerships to church growth to what Dave was just talking about. It's across the board. You go out there and ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 opinions. And at the same time, I hope that sometimes we take the time to appreciate and realize the day and age we live in, the fact that we get to see what these companies are doing. I mean, studies on companies are nothing new. You know, we've always studied organizations. We've always studied our leadership. Everything from the founding fathers to ancient civilizations to everything. We've always done this. In fact, one of my favorite books ever is Ben Franklin's Biography. I mean, who doesn't want to read about a guy who invented the printing press, bifocals, and swim flippers? Some wrong there. And I want to know more about this guy. I want to know what his process is. I want to know, did he stumble into this stuff, or was it part of a lifelong plan? I want to know how he got these things done, because I want to emulate that level of success. We've always studied the Rockefellers. In fact, there's a great series, I'm sure most of you have seen it, on History Channel, The Men Who Built America, you know, where we can look. But here's the difference. We're used to studying these great leaders and these great organizations decades later or centuries later, where you can sit back and say, yeah, the wheel was pretty good. I would have done it differently. And you can look at these things, but for the first time, if you think about this, for the first time in world history, we have this front row seat, live action, play-by-play for companies like Facebook, Uber, Airbnb. We get to see them go from literally one user to having some of the largest market caps in the world. We get to see them crumble in front of us. We get to see them explode in front of us. We get to see who gets acquired, who doesn't. We get to see who goes on to have toxic cultures and who goes on to lead the way in the next generation of how business is done. And we get to see this every step of the way because we live in this kind of sharing economy where everyone wants to share this data. It's readily available. So I hope you're taking advantage of that because you do realize that if we were 50 years ago, people would sneak into their competition. They were called corporate spies, and they would go to prison for it. And all you have to do is subscribe to the Twitter feed of your favorite CEOs, and they will tell you everything. So I just sidebar there, but I hope that you're reading every book. I hope you're listening to every podcast. I hope you're reading studies like this. I enjoy stuff like this. And when I dove into this Project Aristotle, I know I'm like totally revealing my inner nerd. Yeah, like I like to sit around and read Project Aristotle, and just kind of see what these are like. But, Jason, my business partner, will tell you, like, I'm in his office like every day. Like, hey, I read this study and this is what they're doing. Because one of the companies that we own is a software company. And so I love looking in and like reading what some software company in London is doing. And how do they hold their project meetings? How do they schedule their launches? Because I can learn from that. It's so interesting to see somebody that's further along than I am. And so I, of course, like jumped all over this because Google's setting out for, I don't like autonomous cars. That's cool. Google Glasses so I can see Yelp reviews while I'm walking down the road. Okay. But like now they're going to solve world happiness. This is interesting. And so, I kind of dove into this. And I got to tell you, I was completely frustrated. Because I think a lot of times when we read things like this or when we look up things, we're really looking for this magic formula. I know I am. You're looking for this, like, I don't want to hear just about your core beliefs. Like, what time do you get up? What do you have for breakfast? Is there a certain song you listen to on the way to work? How do you hold your project meetings? How long are they? Do you guys sit or stand? How do you feel about those sleep pod things? Do those work? Like, I just want to be told what to do. And I think to some degree, even though we're entrepreneurs and we're creative, at the end of the day, part of being an entrepreneur isn't just being creative, it's wanting to win. It's wanting to get there. It's wanting to do better than everybody else. So if I can start 7 steps in because I'm copying your routine, I'm absolutely going to do that. And so I'm looking for that, and I totally come up short when I read it. I'm going through every interview I can find, and the only thing they can agree on is they don't agree on anything. And I'm sure when you're out there on blogs and you look up time management, you're going to see the same thing. You look up productivity, one person's like, throw your to-do list away. The other person's like, live from your to-do list. Okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about. I beat that point to death. But as I kind of like stepped back from it and gave up on it, I did start to spot this thread. And even though I've reached out to Google, they've not called me back yet. I really think I'm onto something here, but not really. So I really started to spot this common thread, that there was a commonality, even though you had one person saying, here's how we hold project meetings, and everybody stands, and they're only 15 minutes long, and then you read somebody else's, and they're like, you got to get everybody in the company involved. I did start to see these commonalities, even though their practices don't line up. See, what I started to see is that even though you'd have two companies that both approach marketing completely different, their methodology of marketing was completely different, how they spent the money, what they felt was important, their mindset and their approach to marketing was exactly the same. I'm really into design, and so you look at some of the greatest designers in the world, and you look, and their philosophies are completely different, and yet you start to see, wait a minute, the way they approach design, their mindset about the design is the same. And so that one commonality that I started to see, that one thread that I saw in interview after interview after interview, it didn't matter if it was a software company in London or a medical office in Ohio, over and over and over again, there was this common thread, and that's what I want to talk about. See, I started to see that it had absolutely nothing to do with what they did. And it had nothing to do with how they did it. But it had to do with that approach. It wasn't their methodology. Instead, it was their mindset. And I call this the difference between internal thinking and external thinking. I'm going to kind of go through these a little bit. it should be painfully fun because I think you'll identify yourself in one of these two categories as I go. So with internal thinking versus external thinking, they both, let's just go real apples to apples. They both have the same situation. They both have the same circumstance. They both have the same upbringing, the same background, the same education, the same connections, and the same opportunities. Okay? Completely apples to apples. The reason I call this external thinking is because it operates under the core belief that these external factors completely dictate what my actions can be. And the reason I call this internal thinking is because it operates under this core belief that my actions completely dictate my fate. And in fact, that these items here, they're completely insignificant. They have nothing to do with, and Ryan, you're the only speaker really, you and Dave, so I keep picking on you. But you think Ryan was, again, sitting there saying like, well, I didn't have enough education. I didn't have enough this. No, it didn't matter because Ryan believes, and we heard about it last night, Ryan believes that his actions are the one that decide whether or not he's number one in the nation or not. Not the economy, not anything else. So when you look at internal thinking, or when we look at external thinking, we believe that these outside factors, they actually begin to compact or restrict my choices, my options that I have. Again, whereas with internal thinking, it's all based on the core belief that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what interest rates are. It doesn't matter if I got the client or didn't get the client. It doesn't matter what happened with GMAC. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I have a purpose and I have something that I'm setting out to do and I'm going to do it. Whereas with external thinkers, every single action becomes completely crushing. The economy, unemployment. I wanted to take this to market, but somebody beat me and the market's crowded. Interest rates are too high. Hillary didn't get elected. Or if something really, really, really bad happens. And the more of these bad factors that happen, the more of these outside forces they come, and you notice my actions, my ability, they just get crushed further and further and further down until the point that you have no choices. You have no ability. Are you familiar with the phrase? You know, I'm playing with the cards that I was dealt. That's exactly where that lies, and to the point where your actions, your ability, it's completely gone. And let me ask you, do you think that internal thinkers care about those things? Do you think they really care? Well, care might be the wrong word. Do you think they're going to let it impact them? Do you think they were sitting back and saying, what? Do you think Ryan was sitting there? Ryan, you're just like my sole target today. I'm sorry, but you think Ryan was sitting there like, man, I really want to open 2 more dealerships in 2018, but I got to see if Hillary gets in or Trump. I just got to see. I got to wait. You think at his daily staff meetings, he's, hey, listen, we're going to try to open 2 more locations, but we got to wait and see what the Fed does with the interest rate. No. Why? Because again, it starts with the core belief that what we do dictates the outside circumstances, not the other way around. And so, like, I have this with my team all the time. And, you know, and you probably have this with your teams as well. You get in the room with the smartest people in your companies or outside consultants or whatever the case is, and you say, this is what I want to do. And we've all been there. What's the first thing out of everybody's mouth in the room? A long list of reasons why you can't do it or what it would take to do it. And so we've got a rule in our project meetings that we're not allowed to talk about how until we decide if we actually want to do it or not. So if you're talking about, like if you're Dr. Wax and you're wanting to open more practices, and she says, okay, I want to open a practice here, here, and here. She's panicked. She thinks I'm giving away her strategy. I won't, I promise. And you're saying, I want to open a practice here, here, and here. And everybody in the room starts talking about, well, if we did that, we'd have to this. And the problem is you start getting emotionally invested in the how you'd get it done, and your entire decision-making process starts to lie in whether or not your team of people could figure out how to do it or not, and nobody stopped to ask, should we do this? And I would say that any great thing that we've embarked upon as a nation, as a world, as business owners, they're because we decided we wanted to do something and then figured out how to do it. Do you think Elon, sitting there saying, Elon Musk said, hey, you know what, I really want to go to Mars. And somebody said Taco Bell would be easier. I could probably swing Applebee's. We have a meeting at 3:30. I don't know when we're going to plan this. Aren't we out of money? Like, no. No one said the moon would be easier. It's already been done. No, they stopped and said, do we want to do this? And they get firmly committed to the goal, firmly committed to the path, firmly committed to where they're going, long before, at least in my project meetings, anybody's ever allowed to ask the question, how would we do that? And I would encourage you to do the same. You've got to have this really clear decision-making on what exactly it is you want to do. Otherwise, every decision you ever make is going to be purely based on whether or not you can figure out a methodology to get there. External thinkers, you'll be able to spot because every market condition is an opportunity to destroy your dream, conquer you, and be another reason why, see, that wasn't a good idea. Internal thinkers, you'll kind of know yourself because you're the ambitious ones, that you look at these things, and every single circumstance is something to be conquered. External thinkers, every loss destroys your confidence and further just proves that you can't do it. And with internal thinkers, every win just builds confidence. It builds that memory muscle and has you knowing that you can do this. I think everybody's heard the stat, lottery winners will return to their previous income. People that earn, here's another one you may or may not know. People in general tend to earn within 20% of the people that they hang out with. You can look at any social group, and some people will say, oh, that's because people are drunk. No, it's because the people that you're around, you're going to mimic, you're going to act like, that's what you're going to start to do, okay? And Ryan's still picking on you, but if I wanted to get into fundraising, I'd start hanging out with Ryan, right? And I'm not reducing you to fundraising. I'm just saying that's a skill set you have that I have no idea. I wouldn't know how to raise $20, Ryan. But if I get around him, I bet all of a sudden, like, you know, some cause that I am passionate about is going to start getting like $400,000 a year because I hung out with Ryan, and Ryan's doing this, and entrepreneurs are sparked on by that, and we get excited by that, and before I know it, I'll be mimicking that behavior. That's not a bad thing. With internal thinkers, have you ever noticed, so with external thinkers, they get back to their place, and that's what I mean by lottery winners. They get a handout, they get that tax return, where do they end up months later? Right back where they were. And yet with internal thinkers, you notice it's the exact opposite. They're like, I mean, we all know these people, and you kind of can hate them sometimes. Like, everything they do is a home run. Every product they launch is a win. They've changed careers like 3 times, but they've all been successful. Dave. And, you look at this, or you look at, I'll pick on Trump because he's up there. I mean, how is it that this guy goes through like 5 marriages, 3 bankruptcies, loses everything, and every time he comes back out on top, and somehow now he's the leader of the free world? Think about that. No matter what, he's just getting back to the same place over and over again. So let's kind of identify this a little bit more. You're going to recognize external thinkers because they like to use stats. They like to say things like 1 out of every 300 young adults are, and they like to use those because it makes them feel more comfortable. It makes them feel comfortable in their failure. It makes them feel like there's a community around that. Whereas internal thinkers, they're the opposite. They say, I heard there was this one. I heard 1 in 300. I could be that one. And that's the difference in that mentality. External thinkers, they make excuses for those failures, and it's to make themselves feel better. Whereas internal thinkers, they're going to lean on those past wins to make themselves feel optimistic, even when the odds are against them. External thinkers, again, they're going to use those stats to prove that it's not their fault. It's not my fault I can't find a job. 78% of millennials don't have jobs. I'm just in that boat. I hear this all the time. Says the blogger from his basement that doesn't have any career in journalism. Seriously, careful what you read. Whereas the internal thinker, they see that one success story, that one moonshot to prove that it can be done. I'll tell a quick story on that. I started a few years ago. I'm trying to feel too bad for me in this. A few years ago, I was feeling kind of down because, I've had these certain financial goals and these certain things, and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, I think I'm just done. I think I'm just, what do you mean? I said, well, anybody that's a self-made billionaire did so before 30. And I don't talk about my age much, but it won't be any surprise. I am past 30. And, and so I'm sitting there. I'm like, there's literally, you can't name anybody that's a self-made billionaire that came from the middle class that did so after 30. I missed my chance, And she just looked at me with this really clear, someone has to be the first, Ryan. And that's me being external thinking. That's me thinking okay, I can't do it because the circumstances are that if you don't start some software company in your 20s and happen to live in Silicon Valley zip code, that you're not going to do it. And the internal thinker says, well, that's not really true. Someone has to do it. Someone had to start Silicon Valley. Someone had to start this culture. Probably the worst one I want to warn you about with external thinkers, though, and this one just is really irritating. It's an understatement, but I'll leave it at that, is I think external thinkers tend to seek out other people that are failing because they want to gain that sense of normality. In fact, to some degree, I don't think they realize they're doing this, but they want you to fail. They want other people to fail. They want to join in. And I'm sure, Ryan, you went through this in 08, 09, 2010. Every other dealer, are you guys down? How far are your numbers down? How many stores have you closed? Why? Because they want to feel good about their own failure. And if I can't find other people that are failing, then it must be me. And I don't want to face that. But if I can go out there and I can find out, I talked to 10 other dealership owners, and they're all going through the same thing. That's not my fault. It's the circumstances. It's Trump. It's the Democrats. It's the economy. It's interest rates. It's the banking system. It's not me. And so they seek that out. And that's damaging and it's dangerous. And I would encourage you to stay away from them because they'll drag you right down with them. And they're happy to do it because it's the only thing that helps them sleep at night. Internal thinkers, on the other hand, are the exact opposite. They see other people with even a glimmer of that success, and they want to latch onto that. They see someone with any level of entrepreneurial ability, with any level of a great idea, and they're going to work with them. They're going to give them a hand. They're going to pull them up because they honestly believe they're pulling them up to this life-saving lifestyle that's going to change everything for generations. And they honestly believe that if I can go help this kid, if I can go help this young adult, if I can help this guy that's starting up, and that's who you want to spot, that's what you want to do. So I want to challenge you with a question, and that is, which one of these are you? Don't answer it out loud. There's no survey in the app or anything like that. Which one are you? Think about it. Then I want to challenge you that we're all both of these things. I think to some degree, you can look at your successes. You can look at those times where you moved when the rest of the market wasn't, where you made forward advancement in your company, where you did something that no one else was doing. And you can look at that and say, those are moments that I believed that my actions were bigger than the circumstances around me. Bottom line, that's what it comes down to. And I think at the same time, you can look, and for those of you that maybe identified more as external thinkers, you can look at the handful of wins that you've had, the successes you've had, and I bet you're going to find the same thing. These are moments that I stepped out of my comfort zone and said, you know what? I know this is a bad time. I know interest rates are this. I know this circumstance that. I know this isn't the time to enter the market, but I really feel my gut is telling me that it is. And you write that off and say, oh, I have good intuition. No, you didn't have good intuition. You just decide to be more bold than the next guy. You decide to go for it faster, harder, bigger than the next person. That's why you won. It wasn't because you were right. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It wasn't because you have this amazing intuition. We as entrepreneurs think we have this like visionary landscape, and we can see the next things. No. We just get in our own heads, we believe we can do it, and we run faster than the next person. I hate to break it down that simple, but that's why you're winning when you win. So let's talk. I'm going to end with 4 easy things that we can do to kind of make this move. The first one is, I have to press the button one more time. The first one is you have to stop shying away from failure, things that seem hard. You've got to identify clearly what it is you want to do. And you notice it's in subtext on purpose, regardless of how difficult it is. Okay, this is a simple thing. If you want to be the largest lawn care company in Southeast Michigan, or you want to be the #1 dealership in the world, it's got to start with a simple 4 or 5 word statement of what it is that you want to do. And please, by all means, get that down on the napkin long before you allow anyone in your organization or anyone in your family or anyone around you or yourself to start talking you out of it. You've got to decide what it is you want to do. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to pick an easy win. I want you to, and the reason I want you to do that is because winning is contagious. Is it not, Ryan? Winning is contagious. You launch one dealership and sales go up like this. Before long, I don't mean to sound arrogant in what I'm about to say, but you talk to several of these guys and gals and they'll tell you before long, you don't remember how to fail. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I just mean muscle memory-wise. You know, when Jason throws stuff at me, I don't remember how to not duck. It just happens. Okay? And you get to this point where you don't remember how to fail because all you've done is win, win, win every time, no matter what. A few DJ Khaled fans out there. Okay. And so I want you to pick an easy one. So if your goal is that you want to be the largest lawn care company in Southeast Michigan, you got to ask yourself, what are some of the things that I'm going to need to do that? Like maybe develop an email list, things like this. Okay, this will cost you like $20 a month. Oh, I need my customer service team to start asking people for their email addresses. This is what I'm talking about. These are easy steps. These are easy things you can do. But the reason you should do them is because before long, what are you doing? You're winning. Hey, I set out this week to find an email program, and I did. Then, pick progressively harder goals. It's kind of simple. This would be the same approach if you were growing your business or trying to lose weight, hired a fitness coach, whatever the case is. They're going to go through these same things. They're going to say, hey, what is it that you want to do? And you say, I'm going to lose blank pounds, or I want to eat healthier, I want to be around to actually see grandkids, whatever that is. And then we pick an easy one. Okay, what I want you to do this week is I want you to find your sneakers in that closet. That's the goal. That's the only thing I want you to do. Okay, nobody ever starts out and says, this week for fitness camp, you know, I want you to go through it. I want you to do 500 sit-ups. You'd never go back. Okay, this is just that same type of process. And then what you have to do is you have to continually make that harder and harder. And this is what they do at the gym, I think. I've never been there. You just go, and every day they increase your weight, I assume. That's what they do on TV, at least. And so they go and they increase your weight, and they make it harder, and they want you to do more. Hey, you did 15 last week. This week we're going up to 20. And that's what you're going to do, because you're just simply saying, okay, I did the easy stuff. I started to develop muscle memory. I started to feel good about this. I started to get some wins. I started to build some confidence. My mindset and my approach changed. And so now you take on harder stuff, and harder stuff, and harder stuff. I mean, ask Ryan to go back in time and imagine himself at a 22-year-old kid and say, oh, we're going to build a $5 or $10 million dealership that has salons and cafes and clothing store in there. What's up with that? We'll talk later. Ask him to think about that. But again, he didn't just jump from one thing to the other. Win after win after win after win after win until I bet he barely batted an eye at that building. Because at that point, he had developed, not arrogance, confidence. Last one, extra credit. This used to say, get rid of your friends. My assistant said I should soften it up. Surround yourself with winners. When you think clearly about what it is you want to do, then it'll be really clear to you who it is that you need to be around. It's just that simple. And I'm telling you that if you get around people that are constantly there to just complain about the government, complain about the market, complain about competition and everything, then you will fall into that mindset. And yet at the same time, if you get around people that are constantly willing to conquer these things, that get excited by challenges. I was listening to a Freakonomics episode recently, and it was with the CEO of Pepsi, and she was talking about this like once a quarter dinner she has with like the CEOs of like every company that's worth over $100 billion or so. I thought, wow. And it was great because they asked her, like, what do you talk about? And they're like, oh, we talk about like staffing and, like how hard it is to pick legal teams and, world domination and how, I'm just like, wow, this must be so incredible. And yet you look at this and it's like, yeah, they're having to deal with these worldwide market forces that I don't have to deal with. And yet they're trying to make these decisions and they've figured out that what I really need to do if I'm the CEO of Pepsi is I need to hang out with the CEO of Oracle. That's the only way I'm going to deal with these really long problems that I can't even pronounce. They talked about there. It was a good episode. But so go through. That's your extra credit. Dump your friends. No, it doesn't say that. Dump the wrong friends. Find the right friends. So thank you very much. And,
Awesome. So, guys, we still have about 10 minutes left in this talk. So what we're going to do right now is, Colin, if you want to go ahead and put up that slide for me real quick. Actually, he's coming down right now. Colin will get to the computer in about 30 seconds. I'll describe to you guys what we're going to do. So I have this iPad right here in front of me where we're going to have the ability for you guys to text in and ask your questions. This is supposed to be for the panel that we have coming up in 2 sessions. But I thought it'd be a great opportunity for you guys to be able to ask Ryan any questions that you guys have. So, Ryan, let me ask you this question while everyone's typing in their questions. Did you ever find yourself being surrounded by the wrong friends? And if so, how is it that you got acquainted with the right people?
Yeah. This actually happened very early on, like in my teens. And exactly that. When I had started my first company, I had started an IT company. And, I don't know. I just kind of like woke up one day and realized, like I was kind of just looking. You look around at everybody. And I remember looking and saying, wow, I can't imagine what my business or my marriage or my future marriage or any of these things are going to look like if I continue down this path. And it wasn't like we were doing awful things. But to answer the second part of that, for me, I just literally started hanging out with business owners because, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I would just, like, anybody that was willing to tolerate me, I would tag along. I hate, like, football and stuff like that. I started going to, like, Michigan football games with people and, like, doing all this stuff. Just anything I could do to be around the people that I thought were 10 years ahead of me. And surprised, they not only tolerated me, I think they enjoyed it. I think people want to pour into somebody, and they see this starry-eyed kid, and they just want to, so.
Yeah. So, guys, I actually have really bad news about this text-in thing. Apparently, that expires after 24 hours, and I hooked this up 2 days ago. So does anybody out in the crowd have a question that they want to ask right now? John,
Hey,
you have a question. Do you want to just yell it from there? And then I'll reiterate it. So I'm going to reiterate that just for the recording. But John just asked, if you find yourself being external, basically, how is it that you get yourself into an internal mode? And if you are internal, how do you keep yourself as an internal mode?
I think that part of that is going back to that goal statement of understanding exactly what you want to do, which was the first thing on that bullet list. Identify clearly what you want to do. I don't mean to say it's so simple that once you've decided that everything else falls into place. And I keep leaning on Ryan's talk from last night, but that's exactly. He said once he had decided, largest dealership in the world, all other decision making starts to filter through that. When you really want something and you're really committed to doing it, then people say things like, should we move to a larger facility? Should we do this? Should we take it? What should we do with our credit lines? What should, like every single, what kind of marketing platform should you buy? You buy the big one. You buy the most you can afford to do. And I heard Phil Hagerman talk about this last year. When you're really committed to where you're going, you spend the money on the most expensive pharmacist, the most expensive tech you can find because you know clearly where you're going. And so really good question. And I guess the short, again, is once you have that level of clarity and you can see it, smell it, taste it, describe it in your sleep, everything else just becomes pointless. It becomes things that you're not willing to tolerate doing. And John, to answer the second part of your question, which is, what is it, like how do you keep yourself in that mode? Again, it's the same thing. For me, it's like a couple years ago, I just decided that I wasn't willing to do anything that wasn't towards that goal. And so I'll walk by, one of my project managers or something like that, and for those of you who don't know, our executive project manager, Kendra, major part, she's been with me for 10 years, and I'll walk by her office, and I'll say, is there anything you need help with, that kind of thing, and she'll rattle off stuff, and I'll just kind of say, I was kind of just being nice. I'm not actually going to do any of that stuff today. And I finally hit a point, honestly, I would rather sit in my office and do nothing than work on the wrong things. And that was a tough transition, and she would tell you there are times between meetings that I will literally not work on anything before I'll switch mindsets and start working on the wrong things.
You know, it's funny. People actually have my phone number, and so they just decided to start texting in my phone number rather than the actual number. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you this question from someone who just texted me. And it says, what blogs and or market leaders do you follow for business and marketing?
Oh, I really like Freakonomics because I think it's a good launching pad. I don't always understand any word over 3 syllables starts to lose me, but I can kind of pick it up in context usually. And so it's a really brainy blog. But one of the things I like is it's really a launching pad. Like I learn about these other people. Another really good one, if you're like, I don't know where to start, is MentorBox. Is there anybody here that's part of MentorBox? Yes. Okay. So MentorBox is really good. It's filled with entrepreneurs. And the last one I'll give you that I'm actually not all the way through yet, but Reid Hoffman, does anyone know who Reid Hoffman is? He just created this little thing called LinkedIn. And so Reid Hoffman started a blog, and he's literally interviewing like the CEO of Facebook and the CEO. And I'm so amazed by this stuff that I'm listening to, 2 people that, between the two of them are worth, $300 billion, and haven't just had one success, because that's one of the things I always look for, is I like to see the person that's had 2, 3, 4 successes in a row, not the person that was in the right place, right time, sold their company for the right amount. So MentorBox and Freakonomics are good launching pads. They'll introduce you to the people you jive with.
Absolutely. And then I think we just got an incredible question, too, by the way. If you find that, for the most part, you're an internal thinker, what are effective ways to get the vision across to your team who may be both?
Do you want to take this one? I think part of it is you got to really try not to frustrate them. And this is something I'm still, actively working on daily, because you have to understand, if you're an internal thinker, you kind of have this level of confidence that can be intimidating to people. And you also move at this pace that can be very intimidating to people. And I think one of the things you have to be really careful of is my team knows that quality matters. And I can tell you again, Ryan, I'm so sorry, man. But from the first time I ever entered his dealership, one of his dealerships, they talk about the red carpet. It is the red carpet. Not literally, they're black, but it is the red carpet experience, everything about it. And you can tell that's preached from the top down. One of the things that can happen when you start moving very fast is that can get lost. Or worse, your team perceives you don't care about quality anymore. Because let's say Ryan is the center of that culture. He's the one who's saying, hey, text back your clients and do this, and this is what they expect. The problem is the minute he starts opening 4 dealerships a year, he is literally wearing a hard hat more often, and he's in architectural office, he's doing all this. And what can happen is you're moving so quick that your staff starts to perceive that you don't care about quality anymore. And so for me, I have a really good, solid team of people that make sure they care about those things. I really learned this. I'll wrap that question with this. I really learned this by watching Apple. Steve Jobs, very visionary. And if you look at his next line of board, they're all operational people. Okay? They're very one visionary, lots of operational people. And I used to think that was the only successful model until Tim Cook took over, who was the VP of operations. So what's this going to look like? Tim Cook had a company, operational, team of visionaries underneath of him. The board is almost completely shifted since his reign. And for those of you who don't know, they're the largest market cap in world history. Okay? And so what I would say is, know if you're a visionary or operational. Just kind of break that down. If you don't know, ask the people around you. They know. And then surround yourself by the opposite, by people that are willing to care about the things that sometimes you forget to care about. Not because they're not important, but because just, you get consumed. And so when you're an internal thinker, I think I said, slow down. Remember to explain your team while you're doing. Remember to try not to frustrate them. And remind them that the things that were once important to you are still important to you. You've just entrusted those torches to them, even though it doesn't look like you care about those things anymore, because you deeply do.
Sweet. And then here's our final question before we run out of time. And apparently, by the way, people out in the crowd think that I look really good up here.
You do look really good up here.
Thank you, people out in the crowd. It says, are your goals over the next 10 years still growing leaps and bounds? Are you going to level out at some point? How will you know when enough is enough?
Enough is enough. It's never enough. And not because I'm greedy, not because of anything else. I was at a conference a few years ago, and John Maxwell was speaking. He's like in his 70s now. And I loved it because the first person to ever give me permission not to retire. Like he got up and somebody asked him kind of that question, and he said something to the degree that when I was in my 20s, I had to do 50 things and throw them at the wall because I didn't know much. And, then I got smarter and I got better. And by the time I hit my 50s, I was only doing 2 or 3 things a day. And I said, what's changed since then? He said, well, once I hit my 60s, I only do 1 thing per day. And the funny thing is that he said his incomes only went up during that process because that one thing is something he's mastered over a lifetime. He's tuned in. And so they were asking about this retirement. And he said, I'm never going to retire. I'm just continually stop doing the things I don't like doing. And this was the first time I really felt permission, not to retire. And so to answer your question, I think that my role will just change over time. I think that I'll move from being the innovator to the encourager. I think that I'll go, hopefully, from being the guy like actually designing software and creating things to standing back and telling people philosophy on design and why they should do that. So someday I will retire, and we'll have a big party, and I'll be in the middle right there, and I think you guys can figure out what I'm saying.
We'll put you on a chair and start tossing you up in the air, too.
No, I was talking about my funeral.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
In that case, we're not going to put you on a chair. Wow. Definitely.
Yeah.
We need to move on. Okay. Gosh, man.
Hey, JD.
Yeah, Pat.
There's one thing I just want to touch on real quick before we move on. I want to be really clear because a lot of times when I talk about, going aggressively after things, people bring up, they bring up their principles. They bring up and somehow being successful can be associated with selling out, with betraying your principles, with these other things. And I want to encourage you that it's the exact opposite. That's why I said you've got to start with a clear goal in mind of what it is you want to do, and you better have a really good why. And I think people think that, you can't grow or you can't work hard without sacrificing your family, and it's just the opposite. I can tell you that I've structured my company and all my companies in a manner that allow me that flexibility where I can go on vacation with my family, that flexibility where I know, and this is different for everybody, I'm not putting my values on you, But you got to decide what it is that you want your life to look like. And for me, I used to own a business that really had me working a lot of weekends, and I just decided when I leave, whether that be 5 o'clock or 10:30 p.m., whenever that is, I don't want to be on demand. I don't want my phone to ring. When I go on vacation, I don't want to be needed. On Saturdays and Sundays, I don't want to be needed. When you have that level of understanding of your value system, it literally helps you pick everything in life, including clients. There are clients we don't take on because they work Saturdays, and I know they're going to call me on Saturdays, and it's just not worth it. And so that's where have that really clear understanding of what it is that you want to do, why you want it, and then just use it like a decoder ring to filter every single decision that you make. So thank you, guys, and I think we'll turn it over to Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ryan. That was incredible. So